Hey there, Taco7 here, just taking a break from my walkthroughs just to have a little general discussion. Well, not really a discussion, I will talk to you and at you, and if you respond, that's your business. Now, today it's kind of something that's come up quite a lot during, well, just general discussions of the internet with friends, or I've heard on YouTube, stuff like that. And that is what really defines gaming, and games and gaming together in general. Now, to me, a game is something that's completely different to TV, movie, music, and all other genres of entertainment in general. Mainly because the point of the game is to say, we want you to have control. We want you to have full, most more likely than not, full control over the game and how the game runs, how the story goes, and how the narration affects the game itself. Because in a lot of cases, in modern gaming, the game has actual control over the narration. Now, this reminds me of many things, mainly by BioWare. And other, it's a practice more commonly done in the RPG system rather than your typical FPS or RTS, because of the fact that an RPG is a role-playing game. Obviously, this kind of what it says, but the RPG but the RPG wants you to immerse yourself. The game is designed to immerse yourself, to make you think differently, to make you see in different situations. Now, a person could play an RPG in two ways, really, and depending on how you play those, and depending on which way you choose, defines how the game is played. You can do it's hard to describe, but you can define the character by yourself, or you can define yourself by the character, which is very hard to explain. But think of it as, when you play an RPG, you are either going into the mind of that character, and you would act as that character would act, and as that character you believe would do things, or you start off on a blank slate, and you would define that character by what you would do and how you would act. Now, this is obviously more done within the BioWare industry, because BioWare does start with a blank slate. You have a character there, and although they do kind of give you some leeway by saying, this is the character, this is their background, you can then assume that because that's their background, that is how they will act and how they will move the story on and continue to do that. But obviously, a lot of the times with BioWare games, it doesn't work like that. It works in the way of, this is a blank slate, you are acting like this, and this is how you're going to act. So, with that, it's a lot different to, say, it's hard really to say. I can't really think of another game. Probably Deus Ex, where you have a set character. You have various clues to what this character will be like, but still you do have a little bit of leeway, like all games, where you can decide how you think that character should act. And in turn, you do get the decisions that you can choose in the end. So, the main way that an RPG, rather than FPS, and how I think probably an RPG is more like a game than an FPS or an RTS, even though I do love both FPSs and an RTS. I probably like an RTS more than an FPS. But then again, it's hard for me to choose between a RPG and an FPS. That's because an RPG an RPG and an FPS both have two things in common, and that is you do have various amounts of control in that situation, as in you can play how you would define and how you would see to be able to play. In an RTS, there are factions, and these factions, depending on what game you're playing, have morals and have a set way that they can play. And the game, the company that creates that game will make sure this is done by having a faction that is specifically, say, has superior infantry or superior air mobility or superior technology. Now, this obviously is very different from an RPG, because an RPG will focus entirely on your control via the narrative. And although it does have classes in RPG, and has those classes will define your role, as it were, and how you will play the game, in the end, it's really you're playing the game that will affect the so a lot of the time in an RPG you won't recognize the class you're playing. You will, during the character creation phase, you will obviously pick a class, but a lot of the time I find you will just forget that you're in that class. Obviously during the gameplay that doesn't really happen sometimes, but you would kind of need to pay attention to the class you're playing and the abilities that a person has. But in the end, you kind of put the class that you're playing into the back of your mind, whereas you focus more on the character that you're playing and how that character will perceive the situation, how they will act against it. Which is why, if you see someone playing an RPG during the character creation phase, they will spend vast majorities of time deciding how their character looks and how they will speak, more than time deciding what class they will do. So it's kind of a testament to how much narrative goes into playing a game. Naturally, though, that narrative, you can take that too far by having a game purely based on narrative. And that is a bad thing, because a game purely based on a narrative, although designed to make you see more and have more freedom and choice of the game, does completely the opposite by de-immersing you, if that is even a word, in the game itself, and saying this is how the character behaves. It's hard to have, it's impossible to have a game that is solely based on narrative, such as, say, Amnesia, or indeed Max Payne, which people don't really see it. They think it's more based on combat. But no, if you play Max Payne and look at it from the sidelines, it's pretty much entirely based on the narrative. And using Max Payne as an example, actually I'll probably say, yeah, because Max Payne is more based on narrative, whereas Amnesia is not based on narrative. It's more, I'm not even sure what Amnesia is based on. It's more of a puzzle game. But should probably use a better example than Max Payne, but I can't really think of one. It's entirely based on a narrative system, whereby they show you this character, and you can't do anything about him. You make no choices upon his behalf, nor do you make any effort to sympathize with him. I find absolutely no reason to sympathize with him, because you're given no control. You are essentially watching a film when it comes to Max Payne. And there are many other games out there. I'm just going to look at my board there. See, well, Gears of War and other RPSs, FPSs, will also do that. They give you a character, and then they work so hard to try and get a good story, because you have games like Dragon Age or Mass Effect and games such as that or Assassin's Creed, which have an extremely good narrative system and are constantly praised on their narrative system. And people take that and pick up on it and say, okay, this game has been praised for its narrative system. It seems to be the only thing that people like about this game is the fact that it's got an extremely powerful narrative system. But in the end, the fact that people are praising that is just a matter of they haven't noticed the gameplay. There is still gameplay there. And when it comes to Mass Effect and Dragon Age, the reason why their narrative is so praised and so highly recommended is because of the fact that you have ultimate control over the character. Every single word that your character says, you decide. And people, when game designers see this, they think, oh, it's because they have a huge storyline and it's just so well written. That is, of course, one of the reasons, yes. But if Dragon Age or Mass Effect had absolutely no control over it, you had no control over the system and how you said it, it would be a completely de-immersive game whereby no one would want to play it. Nor would anyone, well, people would probably want to play it, but it would completely lose that edge that you're gaining and how you consider it to be how you consider the storyline to be above par, really. It's the fact that it has such a huge storyline with incredible amounts of detail and lore, especially if you read behind it as well. You'll find that the amount of lore that goes into Mass Effect or BioWare is extremely varied and wide, especially if you go into, say, Dragon Age Awakenings or Dragon Age 2. So they see that and they think, right, what they want is a storyline with a lot of grit and a lot of death, basically. But that is not the case. What we want is a storyline with control, with choices, with non-deterministic behavior and stuff that we can change and we can mix and match. And sometimes what we want is a clean slate of the character. I have not seen, nor probably will I see, an FPS out there that has that huge amounts with an FPS that has a clean slate on the character and has choices. An RPG style FPS, basically. They're more into third-person shooters. But that's kind of what we need, because what we don't want a game to be is a movie. A movie is something that people watch, and they enjoy it for 1.5 hours, it's probably nowadays, usually 3 hours. And that's it. Sure, there's some replay value, but that's only after a while, after you've forgotten the storyline. There is literally nothing else you can do. You watch it again, it's the same thing. You play Max Payne again, it's the same thing. You play Call of Duty again, it's the same thing. You play Gears of War again, it's the same thing. You got no variation, no difference. Whereas you play Mass Effect once, it's good. You play it again, you play it a completely different way, and you've got yourself a completely different story. The problem with it is, and I find, is when a game is so much a clean slate that each time you're making the character the same. That is a bad thing. And for me, that's what happens in Mass Effect and BioWare games. It's so much a clean slate that I find myself, I'm constantly putting myself, portraying that character as me. and so much so that you kind of lose the variation that you want. So you want a clean slate, but you also want to have a reason to change your behavior, to change your characteristics, and I think that's kind of something that games companies, games developers, and games story writers have forgotten and aren't really working on. They're working on a way to make a shit story long and gritty, and this is not helped by the fact that a large majority of gamers in this world basically are casual gamers. So a games company will focus more on portraying the casual gamer and advertising towards the casual gamer, that they forget that there are people who are, such as me and others out there, many others out there, that are hardcore gamers, and we know what a game is. We've played good games before, and not just a casual gamer who sees Mass Effect and sees Max Payne and think it's an amazing storyline just because they do weird camera angles and shaking cameras. That they're too much into the movie style that they can't really see what makes a game. And this is going to lead to a huge decrease in the amount of hardcore gamers that there are out there. And this in turn will lead to a decrease in the quality of games. Admittedly, there are some games that are still catering towards the hardcore gamers, such as BioWare. I'm going to keep using BioWare as a prime example, mainly because it's the one I'm doing at the moment in my walkthroughs. Some of it is dedicated to the hardcore gamer, because BioWare has a dedicated fan base and people know what they like. People know what good game this is if you've played a BioWare game. But if you play something like a Ubisoft game, or, God forbid, an EA game, then people won't really see what's going on. It's a huge thing because, at the time of making this, Black Flag is about to be released. And to me, if you look at the deterioration in the gameplay from AC1 to Black Flag AC4, even though there's many of that, then you have huge amounts of difference in the quality, mainly because Assassin's Creed 1 was an amazing storyline with a lot of grit in it, as some gamers like, but it's hard to say, but I think Assassin's Creed has catered towards the hardcore as well as the casual gamer, but in turn it has left the casual gamer more power and less reason to play other games, and less incentive to expand their gaming variety. Because of the fact that Assassin's Creed is so unlike other games. It's a third-person stealth shooter, kind of, free world, open world, that there are many casual gamers out there that have not played a full have not played a game that isn't free world, and you'll find most games out there are becoming free world to cater towards the casual gamer, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, I love a free world game. It's when people play a free world game, you get the illusion of control. You get the illusion that you have full control over everything. And this is because you can actually move around in it. It's not a platformer. It's not a constricted world where you have to do one thing. And in a sense that, yes, you do have a bit more control, but you have no control over storylines mainly. You play, say, GTA or Sleeping Dogs. So you can play the game, but in turn you have no control over the storyline or how that game progresses. You could put off playing the game. You can just not do the storyline and just do other things. But in the end, you're gonna kind of lose track of how you're doing it. And this was one of the things that I really disliked about how Saints Row have progressed. They focus more on gameplay than I say focus more on gameplay. They focus more on their image than the actual game. They focus more on becoming a loony, crazy game that people will play for a laugh and has no emotional ties. Whereas if you played Saints Row 1 or Saints Row 2, which very few people have nowadays, well, very few people have played Saints Row 1 actually, then you see the gradual deterioration in the storyline and how well written 1 and 2 were. Whereas you get to 3 and 4 and you have no emotion, you have no reason to care for these characters. And in turn, caring for a character drives the storyline and makes you choose the decisions that you will choose. For example, in Saints Row 3, Johnny Gat dies. First scene, Johnny Gat dies. And I felt nothing. I had no incentive to keep that man alive. I just didn't really care that he died. This is a man that I had played through in 1 and 2, and I was pretty much on the floor, just really worried and scared that Johnny Gat was going to die in 1 when he got shot in the leg with a shotgun. I was really emotionally attached to him when he got his leg shot with a shotgun, and yet when he dies, I had no caring, no emotion, no incentive to keep him alive. And this is the thing that comes to gaming. When it comes to gaming, a storyline needs to be adequately good with choices. You need to have that choice. You need to have the ability to game, to choose how you think that game will progress and how you think it will carry on in the world. But not in a way that's just you have a completely blank slate and you have no incentive to carry on the gaming. You need to have a reason to game, but you also need to have a reason to change your gaming style and how you think you should be gaming in the future. So in this sense, it's probably okay to have an open world game, but in the end you need to have... I would love to see an open world game that actually has a choice. You actually have decisions to make and actually require thinking capacity, not just being able to, say, drive a car around. Because most missions in an FPS, especially gang-based mission, most missions, yeah, in an open world will just require you driving around shooting people. That's just, it's basically the same. It's the equivalent of a fetch quest. So, so in the end, yeah, a good storyline needs to be met with good gameplay. You want to have the ability to change the characters that you're playing and have a choice. Say, Sleeping Dogs, I want to be able to not choose the police. I want to be able to carry on as a Red Pole. But no, you have no choice. You're dragged against your will. You are essentially watching a film, except there are small parts of it where you have control over that film. But you don't have control over how that film progresses. You have control over how long the action scenes are. Which, some people is a good thing. To me, it's just wasted potential. It's a real shame to see an amazing situation, amazing storyline, but in the end you can't control where that story goes, and you just feel like you've been dragged along, and the game is just sighing as it relinquishes its control to you for brief seconds. And it can ruin the game, and this is why some say that games are deteriorating in quality, and in some senses they are right. The game is deteriorating in quality, but hopefully in the future we'll get more hardcore gamers out there and less casual gamers, as the casual gamers convert, as it were, and that way the game company will see that people don't just want a game because of its title, such as GTA. They want a game because of its actual gameplay and how good it is. A game like Grand Theft Auto doesn't become good just because of its name. It had to have a reason to become good in the first place. And if we keep going like that, then we're just going to have three brands of game out there in the future that have survived just because of their title. And I don't want that. I want great games such as Sleeping Dogs, or say Oblivion, or Assassin's Creed, or even Civ City. Perhaps even Star Wars Republic Commander, Dynasty Warriors. These aren't big titles, or Mafia actually. Apart from Dynasty Warriors is quite a big title, but it's only a big title within a certain group, a select group of people. Or Total War. Total War is an amazing game that has no storyline. You create the storyline entirely by yourself. You find yourself... Total War is an extremely cleverly done system whereby you have ultimate control. They don't give you a storyline. You make it up in yourself. You go into the role of an actual leader of your people, a general. You hold grudges against other nations. You believe that you make strategic decisions. You decide strategically which way you're going to invade a country, even though in the end it doesn't actually matter. You go into that role even though it's not even an RPG. And in that sense, less is more, which is kind of the point I've been going at. The less character you're given, the more fun you will enjoy. The more you will immerse yourself. The more you will play it. And that's going to be that for the day. Hopefully join me next time for some more discussions. If I have any more, I'll have to think of another reason, because usually this is the main reason I come up with it. It's just to vent my anger at the world, which there is a lot of. I have a lot of anger pent up inside me, and it's a good way to release it. But, join me for some more gameplay videos, discussions, let's plays. If you have any requests, just put it down, and perhaps after I finish my Mass Effect trilogy, which will take a while, okay? I mean, I'm only barely through Mass Effect 2, and all my files keep becoming corrupted. So, I'm not even sure what I'm playing next. Join me for some more time then. Till next time.